Hey, what's up, guys? Little man with a big opinion here. So, for today's video, I'm going to talk about uh, a little bit of bugging out, a little bit of just getting to where you need to go in general, and why it's important for prepping. And this is mostly something that it does not take any money to do. This is more of, it's a skill to have, and it's going to take time to figure these things out. Uh, Between talking with my brother and one of my other prepping friends, we kind of hashed out a list that I'll read through what we've got on there. Uh, and essentially, we're following the PACE plan method used in the Army. PACE stands for primary, alternative, contingency, and emergency. So you essentially have four plans. And as a prepper, this is, getting to and from work, getting to your primary location to your bug out location. Uh, this plan can cover, you know, a lot of people go shopping in bigger cities or they go on vacations, just anything of that nature. You should have some idea on how to get home. So I would say the primary method is you're using, your Garmin, Google, Apple Maps, whatever you're using, and it's a good option if services are still working because it lets there's construction on this road, there's an accident going on here. Uh, so I would say it's a solid primary method, with the one caveat being once you figure out uh, once you figure out a lot of these routes, you take the same route every day, so you don't really need the GPS to get you to where you're going. Like my drive to school, it's basically the same drive every single day. My drive to the Walmart or even the Sam's in the next city, or when I go donate plasma, or even my drive to going to see my cousin or other family members, it basically stays the same drive regardless. The only thing the map does is it tweaks some things based off of there's construction, accident, something that's backing it up. So that gets into the taking the time to learn your surroundings. Uh, you shouldn't rely on the GPS all the time. I would say the alternative plan would be having these maps downloaded. Uh, unless every single satellite is, knocked out, you can still use your, Google or Garmin or Apple Maps because you have the maps downloaded and you have these routes downloaded. What that won't tell you is if there's anything wrong going on your route, but you can still use your individual devices to get you to where you need to go. Your contingency, I would say, is having physical maps that, as long as there's any type of signage, uh, that you can cross reference 2 points, like Highway 15 and, uh, you know, Avenue Parkway or whatever. If you can find that spot, then you can find on a map where you are, and you can use a physical map to get you where you need to go. And maps are fairly inexpensive, so it's not something that's going to heavily take away from your other preps. And then the emergency is, if you can figure out north, south, east, west, and the general direction you need to go in, you're going in that general direction. Uh, And that's 4 stages of planning. Other things that I would add into this is, I hinted on just having the plain knowledge of what's around you. Uh, Depending on where you live, if you live in a big city, it might be more difficult to know about things outside of your city because it's a lot of information to know. Like, uh, my hometown, I think, went up to like 12th Street. And when I was visiting my aunt and uncle, we went into Chicago and we're doing something, and we went past 123rd Street. So just the number of streets, the more densely populated you get, it gets more difficult to uh, just know everything. Uh, I could safely say my uncle probably knows just about every street in Chicago because he's lived there for 40 years. Where I know at least 2 routes to every city in 150 miles of where I'm at. Uh, and it equates to roughly the same amount of, surrounding knowledge, and probably the same amount of people. If we're talking, living in Northeast Texas, there's probably 50 towns that I could easily get to. Uh, and that's just having the basic knowledge of where you live. And it's something that we subconsciously pick up on without even thinking about prepping. Uh, and then we learn other routes. Like, I know the route from my parents' house to Corpus Christi like the back of my hand because I went to college there for 5 years and I drove home to and from school a lot. And so that route is very well known. The route going from Corpus to outside of Beaumont, where my cousin lives, even driving through Houston, I know 2 or 3 routes to get me to where I'm going. Uh, where this starts to get advanced, and this is where, taking some time to learn the layout of your area is important. Uh, can you say the same thing about getting from point A to point B on a bike? Can you say the same thing about getting from point A to point B on foot? Uh, because the route that you want to take on foot, if you absolutely had to take a route, is going to differ a lot from the route that you take by car. If you only know the route by car, you're probably going to end up walking a lot more miles instead of knowing, where I can cut through and where I can't cut through to cut down. And if bugging out is your primary, you know, means of dealing with XHTF, uh, you should think more of that as the crow flies instead of following main roads. Like, getting to my bug out location is a 15-minute drive. Going down the road, it's about 20 miles to get there. And I had it pulled up on my phone once because I've got like a rucking app, and it's really only about 12 miles, dead reckoning straight to where I need to go. And having that app with the ability of a satellite, I would rather do 12 miles than 20 miles to get to where I'm going. I've looked over the route and I cross one creek, and it's not a very big creek, but I know that route. I haven't taken it because it's crossing a bunch of other people's property, and probably doesn't sound like a good idea, but it's something to think about. Uh, and it's especially something to think about if these other routes are compromised. Uh, which takes me into the next point: is how long does it take to get to where you're going? If your bug out location is more than 2 hours away from your primary residency, I would strongly suggest moving your residency closer to your bug out location, getting a bug out location that's closer to you, or having some sort of means of cache points. Uh, I mostly say that because I like to think of a 2 hour drive as you're able to go 60 miles an hour, so you're covering a mile a minute, and that means you are covering 120 miles. How long does it take you to cover that on a bike? How long does it take you to cover that on foot? And even from a car perspective, it's 2 hours going the best possible route with, no obstacles in your way. Everything's perfect. But do you know your route taking the county roads and the state highway roads and, maybe this private road here or, things like that? Because, uh, like one of the highways that goes through my town is part of the hurricane evacuation route. So that route could become seriously congested. And that kind of gets into another point is, keeping your fuel tank over half a tank at all times. As soon as you, and some people even say 3/4 of a tank. Uh, my buddy keeps a 5 gallon gas can in the back of his car. And he puts that fuel into his car every 2 weeks. That way he's able to, get home and he's given himself like 150 miles to spare. And that's if his tank is completely full. Things could go south if his tank is not completely full. Hopefully he's not, you know, stuck down in Rio Grande Valley area when something bad happens. Uh, he's got the paper maps. He's taken like 5 or 6 different routes going from the border up to uh, his house. And at his house, there's more fuel there so that he can make it up to Northeast Texas. All in all, it's like a 13 and a half hour drive if he was to do the entire thing in one go with the perfect route, nothing stopping him. He can go the posted speed limits, everything like that. Uh, and other things to think about. If you're driving, you got your spare tire, you got jumper cables. Uh, getting to and from where you're going. Uh, it's essentially a bug out bag, but they've called it a get home bag, or that's what I've seen a lot of people call it. And essentially, you have the means to get back to your castle, your fort, your primary location where you have all of your preps. And things to think about, I'm very fortunate that my drive to work is about 3 minutes, and that's even stopping at stop signs. Uh, the walk to work is about 9 minutes. I think I live zero point 0.6 miles away from the school that I work at. Uh, but someone like my dad, who works at least an hour away from home, and depending on the job site that he's going to, it could be further, it could be closer, and everyone else in between. People go out of town for work a lot. Uh, it'd be really interesting to know how one of my friends would get home when he's being sent to Germany to go do work in Germany for about a week. It's not something I want to think about right now or comprehend, how you would get home in a prepping situation like that. But those are things to think about. Uh, it would take forever having to hike home from my aunt's house in Chicago. Uh, and that's also why the entire time on that trip, every time we hit half a tank, we would fill up. The wife's car gets just under 500 miles. The entire trip is like 800. So at the very least, even if we had to leave, exactly from my aunt's house, we're still getting about 60% of the way back home before we really have to mess with anything else. So, that being said, uh, my general wrap up is Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, and in case of following the PACE plan, you got a Plan D. Uh, they go in order from the most efficient and effective to, emergency is you're desperate, you got your feet, you know, one foot in front of the other, and you'll make it happen. Uh, and in general, for everything prepping, if you set up a PACE plan, then you would be more prepared than even preppers if you had 4 steps to everything. You can have 4 steps to your water, 4 steps to your food, 4 steps to medical supplies, 4 steps to just everything within prepping. So I will be doing a set of videos where I continue to use the PACE plan as a prepper and just go through. These are all of the ways you can have backups and contingencies for everything that you do. Uh, so if there's a specific topic that you would like to see in a video, sooner rather than later, leave it in the comment section down below. Uh, if you learned something, like the video. If you like what we're doing with the channel, hit the subscribe button. It really helps out. And lastly, if you had a friend or family member that benefit from the discussions that we have in these videos, share the channel with them. And with that, catch you in the next one.